I'm Keith Olbermann, and this is The Resistance. It went by so quickly and in such a cacophony of 5 interviewees all on at the same time that its importance seemed to go right past everybody, maybe even past the man who was saying it. Quoting, "There is serious belief in the FBI, in the congressional committees in the House and the Senate, that there is an active cover-up going on involving trying to keep investigators from finding out what happened in terms of the Trump campaign, Trump associates near the top of the campaign, and what happened in their associations with Russians, and that there is an active cover-up going on. One of the things that the congressional committees are very concerned about, as is the FBI, is that they don't have the resources to conduct a proper investigation, and the White House is taking advantage of it. An active White House cover-up to keep the FBI and Congress from finding out what the connections between all the Trump's men and Russia really mean. It is a startling conclusion. It was attributed by the CNN guest to FBI and Capitol Hill sources, and it was said by who? Carl Bernstein. Being dead right about Watergate 44, 45, and 46 years ago does not mean he is automatically right about Trump and Russia, but it does mean Carl Bernstein's reporting gets a faster and more durable benefit of the doubt than anybody else's. And while Bernstein underscored that there yet may prove to be nothing to the Trump-Russia links, the unalterable fact of history is that Richard Nixon was forced from office not by the Watergate break-in, but by the Watergate cover-up. People went to jail during the infamous Teapot Dome scandal, not because of the oil, but because of the cover-up. They got big tobacco because of the cover-up. Iran-Contra, cover-up. The Dreyfus Affair, cover-up. Even Bill Clinton was impeached, not based on what he did or didn't do, but because of the cover-up. And Bernstein now says FBI and Capitol Hill sources believe there is an active cover-up being undertaken right now by the Trump administration. If that's true, the cover-up by itself might be impeachable, even if there is no Russian smoking gun, or if it is never produced. Well, what would it look like? What would the signs of a cover-up be? I mean, apart from the nuclear detonation-sized obvious things like the Jeff Sessions recusal or the self-defenestration of Congressman Devin, "You haven't heard from me lately, have you, Nunes?" Well, how about all the principals backing away from one another, like, the new head of the CIA branding WikiLeaks a, quote, non-state hostile intelligence service often abetted by state actors like Russia, or like WikiLeaks tweeting Trump's breach of promise over the release of his tax returns is even more gratuitous than Clinton concealing her Goldman Sachs transcripts, or the Justice Department reportedly seeking to charge Julian Assange, and even perhaps trying to pry him from his hidey hole at the Ecuadorian embassy in London, where he is visited by Nigel Farage and Pamela Anderson separately, please God. Or maybe Vladimir Putin's primary TV mouthpiece, Dmitry Kiselyov, telling his Russian viewing audience, quote, Trump is more impulsive and unpredictable than Kim Jong-un, and quoting him again, more dangerous. Or the younger of the moron twins, Eric, telling a British newspaper of the missile strike in Syria, quote, if there was anything that Syria did, it was to validate the fact that there is no Russia tie. Or most recently, Trump himself telling the Associated Press that in 2016, WikiLeaks came out. Never heard of WikiLeaks, never heard of it. Except that on December 2nd, 2010, asked by this Fox clown, you had nothing to do with WikiLeaks? Trump said, no, but I think it's disgraceful. I think there should be, like, death penalty or something. So Trump denounces WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks denounces Trump, and the Trump Justice Department threatens to arrest Assange, and the Russians denounce Trump as more dangerous than Kim Jong-un, and Eric Trump makes it look like Daddy fired 59 missiles just to show he's not a Russian marionette, and then Trump never heard of WikiLeaks until last year, except he did in 2010. Boys, do not everybody try to run out of the room at the same moment. You'll all get crushed trying to get through the exit. Cover-up. There are other slightly more subtle signs of a cover-up. Notice another odd story that turned up on CNN. Quoting it, the FBI gathered intelligence last summer that suggests Russian operatives tried to use Trump advisors, including Carter Page, to infiltrate the Trump campaign, according to U.S. officials. The new information adds to the emerging picture of how the Russians tried to influence the 2016 election, not only through email hacks and propaganda, but also by trying to infiltrate the Trump orbit. See what they're doing there? Carter Page is no longer a Trump foreign policy advisor, the second one Trump ever mentioned. He's no longer, as has been theorized, an alleged courier carrying a reported audio tape of Trump to Vladimir Putin in an offer to swap Russian-friendly policy changes in exchange for the election roll hacking by the Russians so Steve Bannon could micro-target American voters. He's no longer a possible traitor. Now, Carter Page is the victim. U.S. officials, that'd presumably be current U.S. officials, like Trump or somebody appointed by Trump, and there aren't that many yet, suggesting the Russians tried to infiltrate the Trump campaign by using people too dumb to realize it, like Carter Page. And thus Carter Page becomes not a conspirator, but the injured party, the way if Trump or his buddies are indeed on tape because they happen to be talking to Russians that foreign intelligence services were spying on. Trump and the Trumpettes are not disloyal monsters willing to sell out this nation. They were the victims of wiretaps and Barack Obama and Susan Rice and maybe the devil himself. Carl Bernstein's comments last Friday about serious belief at the FBI and the House and Senate Intel committees that Trump is at this moment perpetrating an active cover-up of his people's ties to Russia underscore the necessity of an independent prosecutor, a necessity so important that Democratic candidates for the House next year ought to run on it and pin down their Republican opponents on it by waving the flag and asking who is running this country, us or the goddamned Russians. And another thing about Bernstein and Watergate and trying to make Page and Trump and whoever is next into the victim rather than the perpetrator. Early in the Watergate cover-up, Richard Nixon tried to make it look like the whole thing was John Dean's idea, that Nixon was the victim, that there was a witch hunt, McCarthyism, communists. We ran out of gas, we got a flat tire, we didn't have change for cab fare, we lost our tuxes at the cleaners, we locked their keys in their car, an old friend came in from out of town, there was an earthquake, a terrible flood, locusts, it wasn't our fault, we swear to God. It sure looks like a cover-up. Resist. Peace.